Hey guys, Tyler Vanderhoeven here. Word through the grapevine's been traveling around that some people need some help building add-ons and just getting started with Statamic and just kind of understanding what the structure is and maybe building a little bit of an example project. Just kind of off the bat, add-ons in Statamic are not super like Statamic specific. There's structure there, and there are helper tags, things like that, that make building add-ons in Statamic very easy. But at the end of the day, if you don't know PHP, you can't build add-ons. But PHP is super easy. If you've got a computer and Google, you can figure out anything you need to. I've been doing PHP for maybe, I don't know, 5 to 6 months, very short amount of time. I took some classes on Treehouse, but the majority of my knowledge comes from Googling things. All you need is enough to get started and a problem to solve. And then you just Google, like, how do I do such and such? And then you implement it and test. And there are little tricks and things that I'll go through today to kind of help you get started. We're going to do, instead of kind of your basic Hello World project, which is this, we're going to do a little bit more complex application. I have a Statamic add-on that I built called Kiwi, which takes the Kimono API. If any of you have ever used or heard of Kimono, super cool project. Kind of lets you take any website and build a REST API out of it, and then use that in other applications. So we're going to use that. I'm going to go ahead and download this. I'm sure you all have installed add-ons before. Put that into our add-ons folder. And just for this example, I'm going to copy this example text since it's built out to my example API that I built over in Kimono. So I'm not going to go through how you build a Kimono API. It's really easy to do. But at the end of the day, you end up with something like this, which you have an API key, which I will change after this demo. And in Kiwi, there's a default YAML file, which lets you store, in this case, kind of more sensitive information. So if you do like a Dropbox API or S3, I was doing some of that, you'll want to put that outside of your code base probably. In this case I do anyway, especially stuff that's not going to change and kind of be consistent throughout any use case of the API, or I'm sorry, the add-on. I'm going to get that word mixed up all the time. And then, so you've got your API key, which we will save, and then you've also got an app ID and also a collection name. Your app ID, whenever you go into your application that you've built, or your API that you've built, it'll be this guy right here as well as this guy right here. So we'll just copy that and put that in. And then the last piece is the collection that we want. And so if you test this endpoint, you can kind of see the JSON representation of the data that's coming in, which is all good. And all of this data is these posts that we want, which have a title and a body. And those are all in a collection that's called collection, of all things, which I did name, so you can name that whatever you want, which is why it's a parameter. So we'll take collection and put that in there. And then once that has been selected, this piece then becomes available to us, which has a title, but inside that title is an object which has two other values, an href and a text. We will grab text, which will put that in front of there. So if we save that and go over here, all of that's getting pulled in just like magic. But we are not learning about magic. We're learning about how to build it, which is this. I mean, if you look at it, it's like, whoa, that's really simple, and it is. And most of it came from, if you go to the how to use piece, it's this PHP bit right here. So we're just going to go ahead and copy this, so we can kind of see where those fell down. Now, when you first start your PHP add-on for Statamic, there's a couple different things you want to keep in mind that's kind of structure for all of the different add-ons. You've got, I think there's a couple of different ones. I haven't built too many other than plugins, which is prefixed with the PI. But there's also modifiers, I think, and then hooks and different things like that that will have a different class object name. And then it's really like structured. So if your folder's name, in this case Kiwi, you need a plugin that's Kiwi, and then you also need plugin Kiwi, so that the naming structure is always the same, and there isn't like variables getting passed around, which is a very good thing. When you first get into one of these, let's go ahead and rebuild this. Why don't we? We'll just call this old so that this can be the actual plugin. So now this is the plugin that we're going to be using. We'll erase all of this. Whoops. Erase all of this stuff. We'll eventually add it back in, but for now, we'll just kill it. So at the end of the day, all you need is this. And there is no variable for output, so we'll just make a variable for heck's sake, and we'll call it hey. So that's a string of hey that is being assigned to this variable output, which will return output. If we change this a little bit, instead of including all that, we just include Kiwi, that should generate nothing, which is exactly what we wanted. We forgot to save it. And we got a parser error because I forgot a colon. Semicolon. Hey, with the little arrow thingy. Which I have no idea why that's there. Oh, yes I do. It's because of this. So as you can see, I'm a professional. So that's as simple as it gets. I mean, you have a return value. So in this case, it's index. You've probably seen like a colon index listing or post listing. So there's different inside of this class. You've got different functions that can be called with those little brackets. So if I were to call this funny and save it, this wouldn't work anymore because there's no index of Kiwi. There's no index in the Kiwi add-on. But if I did funny, now it works like magic. So that allows you to use one plugin and have multiple different functionalities within that one plugin. For our case though, since we only have one function, index will work just fine. And that's back up and running. But if we remember, we actually want to build something that's useful. So we're going to get started here with that. So basically, this is how you get. If I were to just as an example here, this is something that I've used a lot to help you kind of see what's going on. Echo lets you echo strings, so post strings to the DOM window, and then print R, like if you have an array, which is, results is going to be an array. Results is what this looks like. So it's this object that has a bunch of these results. So if we save this and then make sure we have Kiwi being called, we should get a printout, yes, of the array that looks a whole lot like this guy right here. But this isn't really all that useful, even though you could technically read your posts this way. It would be a little bit tedious. We'll want to structure it a little bit nicer, but this does let you kind of see what's going on. And the reason I use pre-tags is that if we don't, we end up getting a post or a printout that looks like this, and that's impossible to read unless you're a magician. Even if you are, I doubt you can read it. I dare you. So that pre-tag just puts it inside that code block, which allows us to then easily read out what's going on here. And then also see what little boxes we can grab. So the first box that we see is that all of this stuff is inside of a box, this array called results. So the way we're going to call that, if we look back in our old PHP, we grab that via results. So let's go ahead and copy that over. Actually, let's copy over both since I'll be going over that very soon. And I'm also going to indent this because I'm that way. All right, and so we've got a variable that's called results, which is what we've been printing out. But now we're changing that variable to now equal results in the box results, which is this box. It could be called anything. It could be called genius, and we would write genius. But in this case, it's results. So this little box means we're looking inside the box results inside this array. So you grab that. Oh my goodness. We grab that box results. And so now, if we comment this line out and we refresh it, we should only get this box right here instead of this extra stuff up here that we don't actually need right now. And we do. But we can still, we've still got one layer that we don't need. All we need is this collection, which is this array of posts. So if we uncomment that again, we say instead of just grabbing results, we're also going to grab collection. If we save that and we're going to get an error that there is no collection right now. So it's going to find nothing and return nothing, which is pretty much useless. So what we're actually looking for, if we comment that out again, what we're actually looking for is this collection called collection, just like we looked in for results. Now we're looking in collection. And now we should just get the array of posts, which is exactly what we want for spitting it out to this return output. However, there's a little bit of an issue going on in that I don't want to return every single post in one variable. I want to split it up into separate posts. So if we go back to what we had here, I only use one block here, but I want each block to be a post. So in the end, it looks something more like this for however many posts there are. So I have those individual posts all posting inside of an article tag rather than one really long post that I'm not really sure how I would get each individual title into there. And so Statamic has a helper for that, which is going to be this piece right here, teeny tiny little piece, very powerful. I'm going to go ahead and comment this out since we got what we wanted there. So we start with an empty output variable so that we can add to it, prefix to it. So whatever's inside, we will add another piece to it as we're looping over the results array, which is this piece right here. And this is getting to PHP. This really is Statamic specific. This is PHP stuff, but the for each loop is super, super powerful, and you'll use it a lot. So this is going to look inside our results array, which would be this guy right here now. And for each item inside of that, it's going to put that into a variable called result. And so what it's going to do in that is each time it's got that little variable ready and it's looking at an individual item, an individual post, it's going to create a variable called output, and it will add it to this output variable here rather than just equaling it, because then you would only end up with one output variable at the end and only one post. We want to add to it rather than just overwrite it. So that's what that period does. And then this is a Statamic piece that's parse template, which kind of adds to the template. So whatever piece you've got in here, inside of here, in this case, this part right here, it's going to bring that in. It's going to bring that piece into this variable, and it takes two parameters, which is the content, which is this piece right here, and then also our results array, which is, again, this results array right here, but now you're looking at an individual post as we parse through that template. I feel like I'm losing you guys. Stay with me. So if we save that, and we save this, we should get pretty much the exact same result we had before. So what it's doing, if we recall, I'm going to go ahead and uncomment this piece here. What it's doing is for each post, each time that loop hits the next post, oh, here's a post, okay, I'm going to put this array inside of this variable, which is going to go inside of this content, and then it's going to spit out, in this particular case, I can get a hold of that variable via title text, body text. I could use href if I wanted to make that an a tag. Heck, let's go ahead and just show that on the fly. Something's going to go wrong. So if the text has an href, I can include that in there, and then all of the things at the bottom, which you won't be able to see but are down here, are now links, so you can click on them. Like, awesomeness. Nice formatting there. So all of these little blocks inside are available to you just like they would be up above, except that now they're individual arrays inside of posts, and so Statamic's going to keep looping through this tag as many times as there are posts, which lets me then go inside each array, inside each loop, and grab title text, title body, title href, anything that's inside of an individual array. So you've got title, and then colon href, or title colon text, which would be this piece right here. But you have to use that for loop to be able to get a hold of that for each loop. And then also, just if I did that as equal, it would loop through each one of those, but it's going to overwrite it, so the only post that's going to be left is the one that's at the very end. So we need to be adding to this variable so that it's all kind of bundling together till the very last moment when it's finally done, and it outputs all of those posts. And that's really all there is to that. The only, you obviously saw there's a lot more here, which is just some meta stuff. It's not, you don't need to do that. It's just for if you're releasing your application and you want people to be able to get in touch with you or document it or whatever. And then the rest of this part right here is just making it kind of usable in more than one scenario. Like if you look in here, this is hard-coded. So if I wanted to add another app or API or something to it, I would have to post that back in as a new API. And also if I wanted, like I did, release this to the public, I need to make it easier for people to get a hold of these different API pieces that are going to change. And these two numbers are the only thing that change. And since that's the case, we can turn those into variables that people can set, and then PHP will dynamically put that in based on what the user put in. So just to get started small, let's start with key, which if you remember we put up in here. Statamic has a helper tag right here that looks at this, which would be this plugin, and it looks in a config file, which for whatever reason is called default. And then you can go inside that and look for the word key, which would be key right there. And so now we have a variable that's available to us that's key. We can prove that if I uncomment that and put in the word key, which should return the number that's our key. So sweet, we've got that now. And that key is this guy right here. But how do we put it in? If we just do key, that would be part of our variable, which is not what we want. Or this would be part of the string, which is not what we want. We want to add it in as an actual dynamic variable. So we add in that string, and then we put a period, which if you'll remember down here is kind of the syntax for add rather than replace or override or whatever. So I'm just going to put a period on top of this string, which is going to say after this string add key, which was our string right there. And so everything should work just the same. So if somebody wanted to change their key because they're a different user, they just put in their key and everything works just like it should, because that key is going to look in or be found in that file right there, rather than hard coding it straight into the plugin. What about this guy though? Because he's not coming from here, he's coming from our actual ID right here. Well, Statamic's got another helper that is this fetch param collection, whoops, ID for this particular example, but this will be the same. So it's looking at the param ID, which is this ID equals and then that number. So if we do that, I'm sure you're kind of figuring things out at this point. We're going to cut that off because this right here is what we want to replace. So we'll do dot ID and then another dot so that we're saying this string added to the ID, and then add the ID, then add this string, and then add the key. And so now, dependent on what we put in this value right here, whatever API we want, is going to change whatever application you're looking at, in this case this one right here. So everything operates the same because it's dynamic. And it's pulling in the same data as it was before. And last but not least, collection. If, like I said before, if you've got this collection, you can call this whatever you want, or sometimes you'll have multiple collections of data in a single API. So I just named mine collection, so that's just going to be collection, collection. Collection equals collection, but we'll use the same fetch param of collection. But where are we going to put this? There it is, right there. And we'll just put that variable in right there. And that'll put that string, just like it was before, right in there. And so everything will continue to work as it has. And these can be called whatever the heck you want them to be. Like if we wanted this to be app ID rather than just ID, that's going to break it. Whoops. Obviously it didn't. There it is. Now it's broken. Yes, see, I broke it. And then we add an app ID to change that name. Everything will be back to normal, but that's a little bit wordy and unnecessary in my opinion, so I'm just going to call it ID and we'll be good there. Perfect. And that's all that was in here other than the meta, which I'm not going to include in this example, but that's basically, that'll get you a lot of use cases for plugins. There's also modifiers, which I'll go over probably some other time, which just take a string. But if you're doing looping, which is a pretty complex example where you've got kind of these articles or these posts that you want to loop through or whatever they are, multiple things, that parse template is golden as you loop through that array. Heck, we're already at 22 minutes. Let's stop there, and I'll post a little bit probably more basic example of something you can do if you just use, instead of doing this kind of tag pair, you just do a single tag, kind of like maybe like Elixir script for one of my other plugins that add-ons that I built. But hopefully that's helpful. Feel free to keep asking any questions. Again, I'm not a professional PHPist. Sounded odd, but I do really enjoy it, and it's easy to do, and everybody's got good ideas, things that they want to build, things that they need help with. So contribute, like really put yourself into it, and as long as it takes, even if it takes a while, keep working at it. It's fun stuff.